Hello, my fellow broke aristocrats, and a happy Sunday to you. Hope everyone is doing great. And today we are continuing our ongoing series on optimal health, weight loss, nutrition, while being on a budget. And I have decided to go through all of the vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants necessary for optimal health for the entire month of February. So today we are talking about vitamin D, and vitamin D is a very interesting vitamin because we now suspect that it also works like a hormone. So I'm going to give the rundown, hopefully in about 5 minutes or less, about what vitamin D does in the body, how much you need, and why we think it's so important. I'm also recording this at my lunchtime so that you can enjoy the lovely sound of the dogs and the beautiful sunny weather we have here in Southern California for your entertainment. So as I had said yesterday, and I'll say it here again, vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, so it is best taken usually it is given in a pill that has some oil in it to help with absorption. Usually we get vitamin D by sitting in the sun. It's actually a reaction that takes place when the sun hits our skin. And so if we spend a lot of time indoors, or if we live in a part of the world where we don't get a lot of sun, then theoretically we can get low in vitamin D. There are some vitamin D food sources like mushrooms, which come in a form of vitamin D known as D2. But you have to consume massive amounts of mushrooms in order to get adequate amounts usually. Supplementation can also be gotten from foods that have been fortified with vitamin D. Excuse me. An example would be dairy, but not everybody is dairy tolerant. And dairy has other things in it like sugar, fats, and proteins like casein, which again, not everybody responds well to. So for that reason, many doctors do feel that it's worth the investment to supplement with vitamin D. Vitamin D is important in bone growth and bone formation, and this is the reason why we are very concerned about vitamin D levels in underserved populations with children especially who may be vulnerable. If children do not get adequate amounts of vitamin D, it can create a condition called rickets. I'm showing you some pictures hopefully to let you see what rickets looks like. It's a softening of the bones because basically what vitamin D does, working alongside vitamin K, is it helps take up calcium and helps bone deposition and strength of growing bones. So that is rickets. And usually with children we will start supplementing with 200 international units of vitamin D a day, up to 400 depending on what the vitamin D levels are of the child. There are a couple times when I do recommend that people have their vitamin D levels tested. I think children absolutely should have their vitamin D levels tested, especially if the child is indoors a lot, is living in an area where they don't get a lot of sunlight. Children often will spend the mornings and the times when the sun is highest indoors in classrooms rather than outside playing, and so for that reason they're not getting adequate amounts of vitamin D. The third world, particularly in areas where people are covered from head to toe for modesty reasons, depending upon the culture and tradition, might be vulnerable to vitamin D deficiency. The good news is that vitamin D is not particularly expensive. Vitamin D is also important in senior citizens and in people over the age of 40 because we also see increased risk for osteoporosis and osteopenia as we get older. And so for that reason we will again start to test levels in people over 40, particularly women, to try and see if we are going to have to supplement. Now when we supplement with women usually over the age of 40, we might start with 50,000 international units of D2, D2 being the less active form, D3 being the more active. And that can safely be taken, 50,000 international units once a week until we get those vitamin D levels up to where we want to see them. We're looking at levels of usually above, I think 30 is what the standard recommendation is. 30 nanograms per deciliter, I think is the technical, I'd have to look back at my notes, but we're looking at numbers of about 30 or 40 in your labs, but naturopathic doctors want to go a little bit higher. So bone health, bone growth in children and bone health in adults. In adults, usually to maintain bone health, we'll start at 400 international units or to 1,000 international units safely. But some people, for other additional benefits of vitamin D, can take anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 international units daily. Again, we absolutely recommend that you test the levels, particularly if you're undergoing vitamin D therapy, to make sure we've got you on the right dose. So in addition to bone growth and bone health, vitamin D may also be really important for the immune system. And the reason why is because vitamin D stimulates something called natural killer cells. Natural killer cells are a type of white blood cell that kill virally infected cells. And so that is why people who have weakened immune systems, we will often test their vitamin D levels. If you can't fight off a virus, it could be that your vitamin D levels got too low and your natural killer cell levels, your natural killer cells and their activity was affected by low vitamin D. And so for that reason, you might have become more vulnerable to a viral infection. The other thing that is interesting for scientists studying vitamin D therapy is that vitamin D also stimulates natural killer cells to kill cancer cells. And so we also think that particularly in senior citizens, people of color, African American persons may be more vulnerable to certain types of cancer like breast cancer, because it's harder for the skin to process vitamin D from the sun if you have a darker pigment. So particularly in that population, I'm concerned about making sure they get adequate vitamin D levels. For example, we've seen in African American women with low vitamin D levels a higher risk of breast cancer. So again, just more confirmation that we really want to be testing vitamin D levels. Again, children and people over the age of 40 are the two age groups where we're really starting to want to monitor those vitamin D levels. There's been some studies also on vitamin D because it helps take, along with vitamin K, to take up calcium in the serum. Could vitamin D levels, theoretically, if they're low, lead to increased risk for calcium deposits in the coronary arteries and increased risk for coronary artery disease? I've heard mixed reviews, but it certainly couldn't hurt to make sure you have optimal vitamin D levels by taking a dosage that's right for you. Of course, before starting any supplements like vitamin D, you want to talk to your doctor and make sure you do know what your levels are. Okay, that's everything we have on vitamin D. Tomorrow we're doing another fat-soluble vitamin, which is vitamin E. And I want to say one more thing about getting adequate vitamin D from sunlight. If you're only spending about 10 to 15 minutes a day in direct sunlight, you should be okay. Anything more than that, you're going to need sunscreen. I think I covered it all. If I missed anything, be sure and reach out to me. I want to thank you for watching this brief video on vitamin D supplementation, and we'll be seeing you tomorrow to talk about vitamin E. So thanks for watching, everybody. Be sure and share, like, subscribe, and tell me what you were doing to love and take care of yourself without breaking the bank. You know we care about you and we'd love to hear. Take care. Bye-bye.